While Texans had been distracted by the war, the social landscape of Texas shifted as well. Several landmark court cases in the 1940s remade the relationship of African Americans and whites in the state. It also led the way for change in other states. In 1932, Antonio Maceo Smith moved to Dallas after leaving New York and coming home to Texarkana. He arrived in the city to teach school and run a newspaper, but soon became active in the Dallas Negro Chamber of Commerce and civil rights issues. He took aim at the white primary. In the landmark 1944 Supreme Court case, Smith versus Allwright, abolished that political dodge and opened the election process to all Texans. Because it was a national ruling, this case also ended the practice in other states. There were other notable Texas cases that would change the nation. 4 years later, the League of United Latin American Citizens, as well as the American GI Forum, took up the issue of discrimination against Texans of Mexican heritage. A lawsuit, Delgado versus Bastrop ISD, began a 10-year journey through the courts that would ultimately end segregation in many Texas public schools. In 1950, Houston native Heman Sweat wanted to attend the best law school in the state, the University of Texas. Administrators denied him admission and told him to attend the school for blacks instead. Sweat challenged his rejection and sued UT's president, Theophilus Painter, and won after many rounds of appeals. The case, Sweat versus Painter, set a precedent that separate institutions, those for whites and blacks, were inherently unequal. Because of these cases, all Texans were becoming more equal under the law. Even so, much work remained to be done. There were other changes that affected the state. In 1949, Governor Buford Jester died, the only Texas governor to pass away while in office. Lieutenant Governor Robert Allen Shiver stepped up and won outright in a landslide election the next year. He would serve for 3 more terms. Well, he had a lot more Texans to govern. In 1950, there were about 7.8 million people living in the state, 1.4 million more than had lived there at the beginning of World War II. An interesting trend emerged as well. Whites remained the dominant population with a little more than 70% of the total. Blacks, with more than 13% of the population, remained an important part of the state, but were losing ground to a growing population of Texans with Mexican heritage who now compose slightly more than 13% of the total. This trend would accelerate in the coming decades. Texas cities also continued to bloom. Dallas became the largest city in Texas with 614,000 people. Houston, the 14th largest metropolis in the United States, came in second with a little less than 600,000. San Antonio was third with just more than 500,000 residents. Even with the growth of industry, petroleum, and other ways of making a living, farming and ranching remained critical to Texas. Cattle and cotton remained the largest sources of revenue for the state, but the drought deepened. Soon, officials declared 244 of the state's 254 counties as disaster areas. The coming years would continue to be dry, but Texas continued growing anyway.